meet you. I'm
Thank
Judy
you.
Miller from Student Newsnet. I have just two questions. I actually went on your Twitter feed
Yes.
and did a lot of reviews. Really a fun Twitter feed to read. And the one that popped out to me, I think you mentioned it earlier in talking with the students, the fact that you don't know much about Beyonce, but you can find Crimea on a map. I really like that. And so I'm constantly looking back to try to give the kids an idea of what history was like back then, but how it's very similar to today.
Yes.
So my question is, so many things stayed the same between when you were a teenager and now, but do you think it's still possible for a Big Creek Missile Agency? Are kids still doing that, or what do you see as you travel the country? Is that even possible today?
Perhaps not a Big Creek Missile Agency for a variety of different reasons. We live in a different world these days. When I grew up, we had a big bad enemy called the Soviet Union, which was 10,000 miles away. And we worried about them, but they weren't on our doorstep. Now, I mean, you just have to face it that we live with terrorism, and therefore certain rules have been put in place. And therefore, it would be hard for a Big Creek Missile Agency now to go out and procure the chemicals that we use and this kind of thing. But this is not to say that certainly you can still build rockets. These days, we have amateur rocketry groups all over the country that you can join the clubs, and you're allowed to build rockets within certain conditions, and you learn the same things that the rocket boys learn in terms of the actual engineering and science itself. Also today, a lot of the kids, of course, are into computers, which we didn't have back then, and also robotics. And so a lot of them are doing things from the grassroots by themselves, and I think that's the key. And that's really what the Big Creek Missile Agency made it unique, was that we were doing it by ourselves. Nobody told us to go do this. Nobody organized it for us. We just did it. I know that a lot of kids are getting into robotics these days on their own. And that's pretty cool. I'm on the board of Space Camp down in Huntsville, Alabama, so I see these kids come through. And they are pretty amazing, the things that they know about computers and the internet and robotics and all these things that I never had a clue about growing up. So yes, a long answer for a short question. There definitely can still be a Big Creek Missile Agency, but not quite the same.
Great. The other interesting, well, there's so many different interesting parts of the book, but also, I think you mentioned it on one of your blogs or your Twitter feed. First of all, that orange suit to go to Indianapolis at the Science Fair. I would have loved to have seen that. That's a great story. And then, of course, meeting at the time Senator Kennedy. He was campaigning for the primary in West Virginia.
Yeah.
So that's a terrific story. And I know on your blog you say you let people decide on their own if you had anything to do with the United States going to the moon. But it occurred to me that in 2014 and 16 we could still say that. Let's go to the moon.
Oh yeah.
So with your background in NASA, if you had an unlimited budget that you could use for NASA, what project or where do you think the direction of the space program should go to do the right thing for the space program in America? Where do you think?
Two things. I would still focus on the moon. The moon is our neighbor. The moon is part of the Earth. We believed it was calved off of the Earth some billions of years ago, so it's truly our eighth continent. It's relatively easy to get to, although Mars seems to be it comes out of everybody's mouth. Let's go to Mars. Mars is an awfully long way away, and I don't think we really have the technology quite yet to go to Mars, but we certainly do to the moon. So if I had an unlimited budget, I would definitely go back to the moon, but not Apollo style, where we go there, we make footprints, we pick up some rocks and stick a flag in the lunar regolith. What I would do now, two things. First, I would want to put a telescope on the far side of the moon. It is the perfect place for a telescope that could actually look across almost the entire universe. It is shielded from the light of the Earth. It's a stable environment, and also any kind. I put a radio telescope back there too, because all earthly transmissions are blocked by it. So to me, that would be a grand project that would probably tell us an awful lot, just like the Hubble Space Telescope has done, but even more with a telescope on the far side of the moon. The second thing I would do is actually create the infrastructure where people could actually go live on the moon, mine the moon, make some money on the moon. When we think about who really settled North America, ultimately it was people trying to get away from the kings and the dictators of Europe and elsewhere. They were people who were running away and hoped to create a new life for themselves and their families in dignity. And I can see the moon doing that. I can see the moon beckoning just pioneers, sometimes trying for religious freedom even, to go to the moon and make a living there. And wouldn't it be wonderful? I can't imagine any young child, wherever they were, growing up to being a terrorist or anything else, if they could look up and see lights on the moon. There's the civilization of the world. These are the great things that can be done. This is the thing. That's what you should strive for. I think one of the best ways to make this a better Earth is to populate our nearest neighbor, the moon.
So you're not, are you in favor of the one-way trip to Mars that, I don't know, thousands of people have signed up for?
Well, what I heard was that it's about the size of your average American bathroom, and what they were looking for is a husband and wife team to go. I said, if you do that, only one of that couple is going to make it back. I can almost guarantee that. If it was up to me and I was given that trip, I would want to take a good book and my cat.
That's great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.